Sup you beautiful people, hope you've had a fantastic day. Welcome back to a brand new episode of What If Deku Had an Adaptation Quirk, the ability to adapt to survive. This has always been the driving force behind all human evolution. Izuku's quirk though, it takes that one step further, ensuing that whatever fails to kill him will just make him stronger, a force to bring doom against the villains who dare to stand in his way. If you guys enjoy this What If, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other What Ifs in the channel after watching this video. Don't forget to shower some appreciation onto the incredible author responsible for this fanfiction. The link is conveniently waiting for you in the description box down below. Before we get into it though, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. Humming to himself, All For One continued to observe his surroundings, his multitude of quirks still allowing him to see, even without a proper face. Currently, the students were on break for lunch and relaxation events before the intense final round. The phone ringing drew his attention from that screen though as Kurogiri clicked to answer. Gurren, I assume you have answers. Of course. The smug drawl of the information broker resonated through the phone. When have I ever failed to come through? Smug little, Shigaraki growled before Kurogiri cut him off. What have you found, Gurren? The shadowy warp gate user demanded. Kid has quite the power, although he's apparently only understood it properly for a little over a year or so. He heard Gurren let out a puff from his cigarette as he spoke. Kid's power is called adaptation. Anything he survives, he becomes more resistant to in his transformed state. His quirk also comes with a healing factor that's deemed as minor due to the fact that it's not rapid regeneration on the part with that Nomu guy you showed before. But so long as he's alive, he'll heal within 24 hours. Fucking bullshit, Tomura yelled, smashing the bottles upon the counter of Kurogiri's bar. I'll tear that cheating little shit apart. I'll murder him. Tomura was breathing heavily, scratching loud enough that All For One could hear it. Wait, no, that's too easy. I'll turn him into a Nomu. Yes, that'll work perfectly. A brainless little puppet that can never bother me again. Master, the voice of one of his acolytes spoke up in his ear. I believe that would be a waste. His quirk would prove quite advantageous. Of course, my friend. All For One gave an unseen nod, silently grateful that this particular quirk was unknown to Shigaraki. This brand of telepathy allowed him to commune with those he connects to it over any distance, but the drawback was that he could only speak to one at once. He never told Tomura for the sole reason that he'd rather not have the brat pestering his very thoughts every hour of every day. Tomura, All For One cut off the boy's ranting. He will not become a Nomu. Who was that? Gurren sounded confused. Your payment will be sent though the usual channels, Gurren. Kurogiri assured the broker, not answering who All For One was as the call ended. But master, Shigaraki sounded utterly confused at being denied. No, Tomura, I have other plans in mind for this boy and his quirk. All For One's voice was firm, silently noting he might have no choice but to inform Tomura of the other acolytes soon. We will discuss this more later. For now, I wish you to continue with that little homework assignment I gave you. Yes, master. Tomura relented with a petulant sulk. My word, Kurogiri sounded stunned as All For One turned to the screen, seeing several of the UA students in skimpy cheerleader outfits, expressions making it clear they were duped and just figuring that out. A small purple boy with balls for hair clearly enjoying themselves. It would seem that one of the teachers is quite angry. All For One saw the glowing red eyes of a teacher leading the purple-haired boy off, while other faculty members escorted the tricked girls out of the camera sight. Mineta, Aizawa's tone was livid as he glared down at the trembling boy. As of right now, you are expelled from the UA hero course. What? Mineta looked shocked, but you said I just had to get a high enough ranking in the festival to keep my place. I made it to the top 42. Did I need to get to the final round? You're mistaken, Mineta. Aizawa's eyes were still glowing red as he spoke, his frustration with the boy bleeding through. You were told that you must both impress the faculty and show you deserve to remain in the hero course. It wasn't just a question of placing highly, but if you could fix the issues that caused that ultimatum in the first place. You've yet to even apologize to those you've harassed, let alone even try to improve your behavior. And here, the second you believed you were safe, you tricked several girls into humiliating themselves on live television, also you could leer over them. As of this moment, you're no longer a part of Class 1A. I'll be conferring with Nezu to find out if you're even going to be allowed to stay a student at this academy. For now, I suggest you go home. You've done enough already. So, how'd it go? Hisashi asked as he heard the door open, not even bothering to look over as Aizawa returned from dealing with Mineta. Kid apparently thought that just getting to the second round guaranteed he wouldn't be expelled. Aizawa rolled his eyes as he took his seat in the commentator's booth once again. Like every other one we've had to give that ultimatum to. Ken sighed, think anyone will ever actually grasp that we're looking for more than just punching shit hard if they get put on a chopping block like that. We can hope. Aizawa sighed as he took his seat, Hisashi flipping on the microphone as the winning 16 from the cavalry battle lined up for the next round. And we are back, Hisashi called out, eager announcer voice back in full, and we're here for the third and final round. This time it'll be a one-on-one elimination tournament. Each round the fights will be randomly selected, so our first years won't be able to know in advance who exactly they'll be fighting. A hero must be prepared to fight the unknown, so this is the perfect way to begin to experience this. Aizawa added in helpfully. And our first competitors are. Hisashi hit the randomizer button as a large screen above the arena flashed through various images, finally selecting the two fighters, Hitoshi Shinsou and Tagaru Kamakiri. One of your students is up first, Kan, your master of blades, and they're facing the dark horse of the general studies program. So let's see what they can do. Hisashi called out before flipping off the microphone as the two students started heading to the arena, while the rest of the competitors moved to their viewing booths. So Kan, think your kid'll pull through? Aizawa observed them, pulling out one of his many juice pouches. I want to say he'll make it, but I know better. Kan sighed. Kamakiri is a hot head and easily goaded. I can't see him keeping his mouth shut when that Shinsou kid gets going. As Kan finished his reluctant admission, the two competitors finally stepped into the arena, Midnight gesturing for them to begin, while they had the arena microphones ready to hear what Shinsou said to Kamakiri. So this'll be easy. That blonde Pomeranian thug did most of the work during the second event. Shinsou snorted with a smirk. If all you could do was carrying around his ego, then I have nothing to worry about. You little son of, was all Kamakiri got out before he went slack, eyes glazing over. Good, now turn around and walk out of the arena. Shinsou commanded as Kamakiri did so, the crowd and students all confused and trying to figure out what was going on. Told you, Ken sighed sadly. Firming his resolve, Izuku started walking up to the arena, his friends cheering him on as he climbed the steps. From the other end, he saw his opponent for the first round, Nito Monoma. The blonde had seen how his quirk looked in the second round, but unfortunately for the copy quirk user, he didn't know how Izuku's ability worked, while discussions with Yanagi, Tokage, and Tetsu had already informed him of the copy ability long ago. Ready, boys? Midnight asked as he and Monoma took their places on the concrete platform. The sounds of Izuku's classmates in 1A as well as his friends from 1B all cheering him on, Monoma sending a dark scowl to those from 1B cheering for the Greenite. Ready? Izuku narrowed his eyes at Monoma, not liking how the blonde was looking at Yanagi and the others. More than ready to get rid of this 1A cur, Monoma sneered. Then begin, Midnight raised her riding crop as Izuku charged, going just slow enough that he knew Monoma would get a chance to tag him. Ha, Monoma cackled after the lightest of touches, the two now on opposite sides of the arena from when they'd started. Let's see how you handle me now. Monoma charged at Izuku, both of them transforming in tandem. As he changed, Izuku grew, bulking up as his skin darkened to gray and hair paled to white. Bone growths that he was sure would one day become spikes rising up. Letting out a primal roar, Izuku reared back his arm and threw a punch at his approaching enemy. As he charged, Monoma activated the stolen quirk. But while Izuku grew several feet and bulked up massively in terms of muscle, Monoma grew barely an inch. They both had gray skin and white hair, but Monoma lacked the bone growths or air of ferocity, his punch meeting Izuku's as his arm buckled. Monoma might have copied his quirk, but he'd never built up resistances. Yanagi and Tokage had told him before that Monoma could copy a stockpile quirk, but not the stockpiled resources that made it viable. He'd figured that Monoma would get his quirk at how it was when he first used it, and he was correct. What? Monoma was whimpering and clutching a potentially broken arm, having rolled and rag-dolled from Izuku's punch. A cur am I? Izuku narrowed his eyes as he charged at Monoma, slamming a punch down as Monoma hastily rolled to dodge, eyes frantic as the blonde realized he didn't have any other quirks he could copy, and the one he copied he couldn't use. Then what does that make you? Izuku cracked his knuckles. So what will it be, Nito Monoma? Will you surrender or will I have to eliminate you by force? Don't talk down to me. Monoma charged, trying to land a kick as Izuku gripped his leg. Then make me. Izuku swung and threw Monoma bodily from the ring, and never look at my friends the way you did again. Winner Midoriya, Midnight declared as the medic bots took Monoma to Recovery Girl. If they were quick enough then they could get Monoma, There, before the copied quirk went away, meaning Recovery Girl could heal him easily. And the next round we have, as Izuku got off the stage, he looked up at the screen to see who would fight next, Katsuki Bakugo and Ochako Uraraka. "You saw the board first," Hisashi shouted, his expression not matching his voice's energy as he worked to hide his concern over the matchup, the gravity-defying Infinity Girl of Class 1A against the Class 1B's Furious Kaiser of Demolition. Who will win? Who will go to the next round? Let's find out. At that, he flipped their microphones off. You've worked with the kid more than we have." Shota turned towards his colleague, "and we already know the kid has a grudge against Midoriya. Will he try to take that out on one of Midoriya's friends?" Kan was silent for a moment before speaking. "Bakugo is strong. He's gotten more control of his strength since those first couple heroics classes, but he still goes as far as he's allowed, pushing that boundary as much as he feels he's able to. I want one of my students to win, but I also know there's a solid chance of him losing control if he's angry enough to make denials of trigger use. Have Midnight and Cementos ready to intervene as needed." "On it." Hisashi nodded, pushing a pager as the two faculty on hand by the arena were prepared, the message sent alerting them to why. As Hisashi handled that, Shota focused on the arena and the two students approaching each other. Uraraka had a determined expression as her friends cheered her on. Bakugo was glaring at her, eyes occasionally flitting over to Midoriya. Midnight gave the signal to begin as Bakugo blasted forward, the ground shattering behind him from the force of his explosions, while Uraraka's eyes widened at the sudden burst of acceleration. "His aerial control is impressive," Shota admitted as he saw the boy fly through the air. "He's shown that in all three challenges so far, but I'm not sure if that was the wisest idea for this fight." Hisashi noted as Uraraka managed to do a partial dodge, taking a weakened hit so she could stay close enough to tag Bakugo with her quirk and take away his gravity. Same could be said of Uraraka's idea there, Shota noted as the girl quickly moved, grabbing the rubble from his earlier action while Bakugo learned to orient himself in the air. Given he wasn't touching the ground outside the ring, then the blonde bomber wasn't out yet. "True," Ken nodded as they saw Bakugo adapting quickly. Bakugo's brash and angry, but he has a talent for combat. He's adapting quicker than Uraraka expected, it seems. They saw her throw the stones at Bakugo, the weightless rocks flying fast, but Bakugo was faster, the missiles unable to keep up with the aerial explosion user. Uraraka kept throwing more and more rocks as Bakugo dodged them and rocketed towards her. At the last moment though, Uraraka returned the gravity and dodged away as Bakugo suddenly wasn't being propelled enough and stumbled, rolling to the ground. As he fell, Shota saw Bakugo slap a palm to the ground, firing his explosions as he flung it outward, rubble firing at Uraraka like shrapnel as she negated her own gravity and jumped upward, returning her own gravity once she was out of danger from the shrapnel. "Stop screwing around." Bakugo's rage was clearly growing at someone using tricky strategies to fight him rather than coming straight at him. "Make me," Uraraka shouted back as she landed back on the arena. Still, thanks to her earlier use of missile rocks, Bakugo seemed to be more cautious to avoid giving her more ammunition. "Gladly." Bakugo's expression was wild, his grin near feral as he shot at Uraraka, spreading his explosions off to the side as well so she couldn't dodge around him. Once he was close enough, Bakugo spun, slamming his explosion to the ground and sending the concussive force out and knocking Uraraka from the ring as the girl rolled on the ground. She was tricky but didn't have the resources of openings to take him out further given the constraints of the challenge. Aizawa noted, fully aware that Bakugo's quirk worked best for this sort of challenge, while Uraraka needed something to use her quirk on. She was at a disadvantage going in but had given it her all regardless. "I'm just glad he didn't go too far," Kan sighed. "This time." Hisashi commented what they were all thinking. "All right, everybody," President Mike shouted as the next fighters took the stage. "Here we are with the President and Vice President of Class 1A, the Fists of Fury and Master Maker, Momo Yaoyorozu and Itsuka Kendo." At that, Izuku and his classmates from 1A, as well as the purple-haired Shinsou who worked with them in the cavalry battle, cheered for both girls, eager to see what their trusted class reps could do. "So, Midori bro," Tetsu drew his attention as Izuku looked at his 1B friends who were sitting with his group from 1A, the two classes having a large viewing booth even if most of the classmates were trying to stick with just their own class. "Hooray, you expecting to win? That's honestly a hard one." Izuku admitted as watched the two girls. "Kendo is by far the stronger physically. Plus, with her quirk being simpler, she's able to focus on what it can do more. Yaoyorozu has a much more complicated quirk that, while it gives her the ability to make more items to provide versatility, She has the problem of having to learn more things to utilize it as compared to Kendo. It could honestly go either way. Is it wrong that I'm hoping Yaoyorozu would win just so we could see her make a giant fire extinguisher to hose down Bakugo in the next round? Uraraka asked sheepishly, her clothes singed from the last fight. Her opponent still sending dirty looks their way. I don't know, imagining Kendo bitch slapping him with them big all hands sounds funny too. Mina offered with a grin and a bumped shoulder with Uraraka. Begin, Midnight's shout reached their booth as the two girls charged each other. Yaoyorozu drawing a staff from her arm as she swung at Kendo who blocked it, using her hands as a shield. Damn, Kendo didn't even budge. Hagakure gaped at Kendo's impressive physical ability. Like I said, she's stronger. Izuku began even as Yaoyorozu prepared a flashbang from her arm, but Yaoyorozu has versatility. Kendo was staggered back from the blinding light, eyes clenched shut even as she deflected Yaoyorozu's next staff strike, clearly used to fighting even without perfect visibility. Possibly from whatever dojo she studied in. Is that a fucking cannon? Tokage gaped as the class rep for 1A used her opponent's temporary blindness to create a full-sized cannon. Yep, Izuku and the rest of his classmates who'd grown used to her making those things all gave a resigned nod. Surrender, Kendo. Yaoyorozu got the cannon point blank on her opponent who finally blinked the spots from her eyes. You don't have any room to dodge. I yield. Kendo sighed in resignation as Yaoyorozu was declared the winner. Come on, boy. Endeavor gripped the rail as he stared down into the ring, his youngest child walking out to meet his opponent, a boy named Kosei Tsuburaba. Show them what you can do. He'd watched Shoto in the first two tasks, using only his ice still but with far more control than he'd shown when he found the boy having a breakdown after the USJ. The fight began with the Tsuburaba boy making a solid wall of air by expelling his breath, the solid wall pushing closer and closer to Shoto in an attempt to simply shove him out of the ring. This, Shoto snarled as the wall hit, splaying his palms against the wall while digging his feet into the ground, making a platform of ice to push back. Want stop me. Rearing back, Shoto threw a punch, shattering the wall with the sound of breaking glass. What? Tsuburaba looked stunned at someone just punching apart his wall of solid air. How the hell? I won't let anything stop me. Sho shouted, rushing forward on a path of ice, the stone arena freezing over as Tsuburaba started slipping about, unable to keep his own footing. Not now, not ever. Rushing closer, Shoto reared his fist back, the ice crawling up Tsuburaba's legs, locking the air user in place, unable to escape Shoto's hard right blow to the face. The boy from 1B was at least somewhat creative, using his quirk to make a wall to stop himself from falling out rather than just an attack. It was a futile effort though, Shoto still moving after him and landing a hard kick on his opponent's chest, this wall of air shattering just as the first had, Tsuburaba falling out of the ring with a hard thud. Winner Shoto Todoroki, Midnight declared as the crowd cheered, Shoto's gaze finding Endeavor's own. This is going to get intense. Aizawa leaned forward as he stared at the screen, declaring the next fight to be Mina Ashido against Setsuna Tokage. I've been curious what the 6 remaining could do given how often they train with Midoriya. It'll be something. Hisashi nodded, but at least we can trust these 6 to keep the fights respectful. I can, what are you doing? Turns out there are already memes about the Calvary battle. Ken was snickering as he looked at his phone. You're a teacher, damn it, act like it. Aizawa gave Ken a look as the blood hero put away his phone to focus on the fight about to happen. Their job to introduce the fighters done, but they were still expected to add commentary if truly necessary or to observe and be ready to intervene or have Midnight do so. As soon as Namori gave the signal, the two girls started moving, Ashido sliding around, damn near skating as she secreted acid from her feet. Tokage, however, while staying fully joined together, took to the skies and started flying about. She can fly now, Hisashi gaped, having not seen the girl do so while still joined together yet. Yep, Ken gave a boastful laugh, she might just win this whole thing for Class B, so get ready, Aizawa. The competitive barb was said with a playful grin at least. And did you teach her that or did Midoriya? Aizawa didn't even bat an eye as Ken sulked miserably. Damn, those girls are acrobatic. Hisashi noted the fight. Ashido seems faster and has more range with that acid, but it seems she's having trouble getting it to go up high enough to hit a moving aerial target. Tokage has the aerial mobility, but she can't get close enough to strike without risking the acid. That seems to be what she wants Ashido to think. Aizawa corrected, noting a small bit of color moving. Looks like Ashido is trying to avoid AoE sprays, probably to avoid any risk to the referees and spectators. Meaning Tokage has an advantage to exploit. That a hand? Ken narrowed his eyes to focus in on the small speck. Yep, Aizawa nodded, his quirk granting him better sight than most, so he filled in his colleagues. looks like Tokage is working to keep Ashido focused on her main body. Notice how she's been careful to keep one arm angled, so Ashido couldn't get a clear look at it with how fast Tokage's moving. She's keeping Ashido in the dark about the hand. Working on weaker AoE sprays might be a good idea for Ashido. Hisashi noted as Tokage finally managed to grab Ashido by the back of her shirt's collar, unbalancing the girl as the pink-skinned acid sprayer staggered back, leaving an opening for Tokage to fly in and slam her out of bounds. "I'll bring it up," Aizawa nodded as the girls got up, laughing and sharing a hug to show there weren't any hard feelings, the crowd cheering for the good sportsmanship. "I'm still gonna get you for that later." Mina pouted at Tokage as the two rejoined everyone, the stadium waiting for the next pair of fighters, Kirishima and Tetsu, to arrive for their bout. "You can try," Tokage blew a raspberry at Mina, "but now we'll see whose moron is stronger." What are you doing? Holy shit, you guys are a meme." Mina, who'd gotten distracted by her phone, quickly showed it to the rest of them. A picture of Izuku in his powerful transformed state, herself on his shoulders while Kirishima and Tetsu were being held as clubs, the standard meme text over the picture. "Seriously?" Tokage's head separated to get closer to the phone. Let me see. Keep your pants on, girl. No need to give Zuku a heart attack." Mina teased as Izuku let out a protesting whine, unable to keep the corners of his lips from twitching in amusement regardless. "But come on guys, let's see." Mina got her phone out and started scrolling through the memes for their group to see what the captions were. "When you've got to beat a motherfucker with two motherfuckers, there are 4 brain cells there and she is 3 of them. High schoolers, dense enough to be a weapon. In Soviet Japan. You are whooping stick when you take my body as a weapon a little too seriously. How to do a cavalry battle when nobody's allowed to touch your girlfriend but you. Relationship goals. Okay, that's enough." Izuku, red-faced, swiped away Mina's phone as the pinkette cackled merrily. "And our boys have hit the field." Tokage bounced excitedly in her seat as they saw Kirishima and Tetsu take to the field, midnight calling for them to begin. Still amused and admittedly flustered by the memes, Ryuko glanced over at Izuku with a playful smile, clearing her throat as she prepared to keep her words succinct. "Go Kakuna." "Use Harden." Izuku matched her grin. "Metapod, use Harden as well," Izuku shouted. "Kakuna, use Harden harder." Ryuko tried not to giggle. "Maximum hardness." Izuku was barely containing his sniggers while the rest of their friends gaped at them. "Knock it off." Kirishima and Tetsu turned towards them, shouting at the same time before turning towards each other. "Stop copying me." "Sorry." Ryuko and Izuku apologized with sniggers as their friends rolled their eyes good-naturedly and went back to the fight. "In all seriousness, how are they doing?" Mina looked over at Izuku. "I know Kiri's quirk, but I haven't seen much of Tetsu's." "Well, for both of them, it's a matter of attrition." Izuku summed up Kirishima in regard to his stamina, Tetsu in regard to the reserves of iron he's eaten. "They're both great fighters and have been improving the use of their quirks while we train, but at this point, it just depends on who can hold out longer." He wasn't exactly sure how their reserves stood, so he couldn't tell. "That's fair," Mina nodded as the two juggernauts continued to wail on each other. "But don't those two train specifically to improve their stamina?" Tokage piped in. "Yeah, this is gonna take a while," Izuku admitted sheepishly. "I'll order snacks." Hagakure pulled up an app to call for concessions to the competitors won't risk missing a fight they would need to study. "Can't believe we need a tiebreaker after this." Kirishima sulked, he and Tetsu both looking exhausted from their endurance battle. "At least you're both memorable." Izuku patted their arms, eyes continually flitting down to the arena where Hagakure and Yanagi would soon be entering. "And have memes of just you two now." Mina showed her phone, which showed Kakuna and Metapod memes about the 2 hardening quirk users along with the cavalry battle memes. The joys of the speed of the internet. "Yeah, the memes." Kirishima rolled his eyes before giving Izuku a teasing grin. "So, you and Yanagi, huh? Who's gonna give you the shovel talk? I'm sure I could get Mr. Kan to do it." Tetsu offered, grinning just as broadly at a chance for payback. Given Izuku's flustered flailing and their laughs, he guessed they got the payback they wanted. "Still, as much as I want to root for both of them, I don't think Hagakure will be able to win this." Izuku tried to change the subject back to the fights. Her quirk, and more importantly her skill set, just aren't built for this kind of fight. "If this fight was in a covered area and she was allowed to," he coughed, "wear her hero costume, then I'd say she'd stand a decent chance, but she's not allowed to strip down. The rules stated that the only reason you're allowed to be disrobed is if it's from them being destroyed or a side effect of a quirk. With no cover, she can't use that to her advantage since her style is very stealthy hit and run." In an open ring, Yanagi, who has telekinesis strong enough to pick up a person, is going to be able to beat her without much issue. Just as he said, the second the fight began, Yanagi grabbed Hagakure with her quirk, gently picking her up and removing her from the ring while the invisible girl tried to break the grip, even succeeding in using her quirk to create light like a flashbang somehow. Definitely something to look into. But all that succeeded in was getting her dropped to the ground out of bounds. And that's the end of the first round. Present Mike shouted, "We'll have a short break before the tiebreaker and then start the second round. Who's ready for combat?" "I still call bullshit." Tetsu grumbled as he and Kirishima sat in the stands, their tiebreaker having been an arm wrestling match that Kirishima won when their hardening fingers broke the concrete table and made Tetsu stagger. "I know, man." Kirishima pat his back, the Crimson Brawler not exactly pleased at how he'd won either, "but you still showed how manly you were in the event so far. And when I win, people will know the only reason you lost was because you lost to the champ." Kirishima flexed eagerly at that proclamation. "Ehem." Tokage and Yanagi tapped their feet, giving Kirishima a look at that one. "I said what I said." Kirishima grinned at the girls as the stadium got readied, the roulette spinning to announce the first fighters of the second round. "And it's Katsuki Bakugo against Hitoshi Shinsou," Midnight declared as the crowd cheered excitedly. "Hey Shinsou," Mina called out, "beat this and Uraraka'll give you a kiss." "Mina," a flustered Uraraka shouted, covering her face as she started to float, Tokage's floating hand grabbing her ankle so she didn't drift off. "Fine," Mina mock sulked before smirking eagerly, "win this and Mom'll kiss you." "Mina," the entirety of Class 1A shouted, many tossing candy and popcorn at the cackling Pinkette. Quite the incentive. The exhausted-looking general ed student somehow managed to both deadpan and smirk at the same time, but something tells me if I try to collect, they'd just slap me. Perceptive. Kendo snorted bemused, patting a flustered Yaoyorozu on the back. "Well, the angry Pomeranian is annoying, so I don't mind beating him on principle." Shinsou shrugged. "The fuck you say, bitch?" Bakugo, who'd almost gotten out of earshot, eager to get to the ring, whirled around. Shinsou didn't respond, he just smirked and started walking to the arena, clearly eager to start the fight. Izuku wasn't sure of all the facets of Shinsou's quirk, but figured there's at least a chance of him winning given what happened with Shinsou's first match. "Think he can make Bakugo do the funky chicken on his way out of the arena?" Mina Tokage asked as the group snickered. Keeping up his carefree smirk, Shinsou observed his opponent, mind racing as he planned his strategy. He knew this brute's quirk caused explosions, and he knew that pain or a jolt could cause his quirk to deactivate. What he wasn't sure of was if there was recoil from this blonde bastard's quirk that would be enough to snap him out. "All right, boys, I want a nice clean match," Midnight declared, eyeing Bakugo warily as the blonde had on a bloodthirsty expression, apparently still upset about the Pomeranian crack. "Easy enough," Shinsou shrugged, microphones still catching their opening comments. "Collateral damage isn't exactly part of my playbook. Never hurt to sell himself to the pros after all." Bakugo sneered, "Let's just get this over with." "What's wrong, Goldilocks?" Shinsou chuckled, so eager to lose. "Begin," Midnight signaled for the match to begin, having had enough of the trash talk. The second she dropped her arm, Bakugo blasted forward. "I'm gonna kill you, you damned extra," Bakugo shouted, eyes wide and filled with a manic excitement. Those eager eyes soon became glassy and flat as Shinsou's quirk took effect. Unfortunately for the hypnotist, Bakugo was afloat when he went under, so even if the recoil wasn't enough to snap him out of it, falling on his face and breaking his nose certainly was. That looks painful." Shinsou hadn't taken a step, and Bakugo already took more damage than he had the entire sports festival, something Bakugo himself was aware of given his furious expression. "Shut up," Bakugo shouted, words mangled due to the broken and bloody nose as he charged, staggering from the quirk once again. It only lasted a moment before Bakugo righted himself and resumed charging, firing an explosion that Shinsou quickly dove out of the way to avoid. Brain hastily trying to formulate a new plan. "It's still an IE," Bakugo shouted, bloody face adding to the angry expression. Dodging once more from the thankfully linear attacks, Shinsou panted, figuring he only had one shot to win this. "I'm pretty sure Midoriya would have beaten me by now." "You ucking," the furious response, just what he'd expected after observing the two hero classes, made Bakugo freeze once more. Knowing he only had a moment, Shinsou charged, rearing his foot back and slamming them up between Bakugo's legs right as the mad bomber was coming out of the hypnosis, eyes bulging from the pain of the impact. Not wasting a moment, Shinsou reared his fist back and punched Bakugo straight on the jaw, wincing at the pain to his knuckles, still not well trained in actual combat. Die! Bakugo yelled, blasting him away before Shinsou could try punching him again. Shinsou rolling out of the arena, clothes charred and smoking, having barely been able to cover his face with his now burnt arms. Ow, he wheezed, head falling back with a thud as Midnight declared Bakugo the victor. Cracking his neck, Izuku stared out at his opponent Kirishima, the red brawler bouncing from foot to foot, eager for a good match. You ready for this, Midori bro? Kirishima punched his hardened fists together. This is gonna get epic. Don't waste your quirk taunting me. Izuku scolded his friend, wanting Kirishima to bring his all, the redhead thankfully deactivating his quirk with a sheepish grin. Right, Kirishima chuckled. We're ready, Midnight. Such youthful exuberance, it turns me on. Midnight declared as she cracked her whip. Show us what you've got, boys. With a roar, Izuku transformed and charged, throwing a punch at Kirishima leapt back, Izuku's fist breaking apart the concrete where his punch landed. Not shattering the stone but still showing that this form was as strong as it looked. Gotta be faster than that, bro, Kirishima laughed, hardening up to his maximum form and charging full throttle. I'll keep that in mind. Izuku took Kirishima's punch, using it to give him an opening to land a devastating counter blow of his own. To his surprise, Kirishima twisted his body so the jagged parts of his form were where Izuku was punching. The level of hardness and sharpness of those spiked parts, combined with the force behind Izuku's own punch, allowing Kirishima to overcome Izuku's resistance to cutting and actually make him bleed. Ha, Kirishima panted, expression already showing how strained he was. I hoped that would work. Midnight, I'd like to forfeit. Izuku wasn't sure who was more surprised at that, himself or the crowd. May I ask why Kirishima? Midnight asked, putting the microphone where Kirishima could respond even as Izuku and his friend deactivated their quirks. You've yet to take much damage in this fight, are even the first one to damage Midoriya this much. Fighting Tetsu took up too much energy last round. Kirishima sounded frustrated with himself at the admission. I couldn't keep my quirk up much longer if I tried, let alone fight. But I did manage to damage Midoriya, meaning if this was a real hero against villain situation, then my teammates would have an opening to capitalize on. Seeing Kirishima's logic, and more importantly him stating it in a way to impress the watching pros, Izuku was very proud of his friend. Very well, Midoriya is moving on to the semi-finals, Midnight declared as the crowd cheered them both on. Although Izuku was positive, he heard the crowd cheering for Kirishima more than himself. Come on, I'm telling you man, it'll be great. Hearing the familiar voice of Kirishima, Ryuko turned to see Izuku, Kirishima, and the now recovered Shinsou returning to the stands, Bakugo having come back not long after his fight had ended. What'll be great? Tokage asked, floating over to the boys like the Cheshire Cat. Is it me? I'm guessing it's me. My fight is coming up and I do tend to be pretty amazing. We're trying to convince Shinsou to join us in the gym. Izuku explained with a grin. He did great against Bakugo, but he already saw he doesn't know how to throw a proper punch and didn't have the upper body strength to actually knock Bakugo out. So we're offering to train him. You should totally do it, Uraraka cheered, pulling Shinsou down next to her as Izuku took his seat next to Ryuko herself once again. I'm not really Shinsou, still showing frequent awkwardness at all the attention and possibly the positive encouragement if her assumptions were correct. Come on, think about it, Uraraka enthused eagerly. You could have beaten Bakugo if you had some more muscle. This'll help if you ever fight him again. I guess. A flushed Shinsou relented, looking away awkwardly. So given they aren't up here, I'm guessing Todoroki and Yaoyorozu are the ones fighting this round. Izuku looked towards her, noting both she and Tokage were still in the seats. They are indeed, Ryuko nodded happily. I am looking forward to battling my compatriot in the next round. It should truly prove a most affable bout as we determine which of us shall be the one to take the golden symbol of victory for our class and grade. Although you will likely make quite the challenge to overcome Midoriya. Just give him a kiss and he'll be 2 days to fight back. Tokage grinned, high-fiving Mina as Izuku blushed brightly. If her warm face was any indication, then she was likely doing the same. Bad, Tetsu scolded, swatting Tokage with a newspaper that he'd once told her he carried around for just this purpose. Bad, Kirishima echoed, borrowing the newspaper to swat Mina. All right, Midnight's voice distracted them before anything else could be said or done, Ryuko noting that the Todoroki and Yaoyorozu had arrived at the arena. Is everyone ready for this? The competitors both gave serious nods, not saying anything as the crowd cheered and yelled for their favorite to win, then begin. At her words, Todoroki shot forward, ice racing from his foot as to Ryuko's shock, fire from a hand as he shot towards his opponent. To her credit, Yaoyorozu was only stunned for a moment before she used her quirk to create a pistol, firing what were clearly rubber bullets at Todoroki, the elementalist leaping up, using his ice and fire to propel himself in the air. As he rose through the air, Ryuko saw Todoroki's hair become a horned mane of ice and flame. The ice beneath his feet freezing in mid-air to create a platform, he shot towards Yaoyorozu at, fire spreading from his hand as he spun. Reacting rapidly, Yaoyorozu threw out her arms. Foam that looked to be fire extinguisher material rocket out from the heiress' skin, dousing the flames of Todoroki's acrobatic maneuver. "Holy shit, this is intense," Kirishima and Tetsu shouted in tandem. No kidding. Izuku was rapidly scribbling in a notebook he'd pulled from somewhere on his person. "I've never seen any of these techniques from those two before. They must have been training hard for this festival. Although if they're showing it all now, do you think they consider each other the biggest threats, or just aren't as worried about everyone else?" Hagakure asked, confused. "Well, to be honest, Bakugo isn't really a threat to either of them." Izuku shrugged, feeling the murderous glare leveled at the back of his head at those words. Bakugo's quirk works by secreting nitroglycerin. All it would take was a bit of flame from Todoroki or some sort of ignition tool from Yaoyorozu, and they could set his explosions off prematurely. Your other point makes sense too though, as Yaoyorozu has the most tricks up her sleeve given the fact that her quirk technically has few limits, and Todoroki has some of the most raw power in the school. Even his quirk, as broken as it was primarily a defensive one. All offense was up to his own training and whatever openings his quirk gave him. As Izuku spoke, Todoroki had been freezing more and more of the arena. His flames melted much of his ice, but the other half of his body would just refreeze it again. The rapid thawing and refreezing creating more and more ice, cracking apart the arena as Yaoyorozu struggled more and more to keep her footing, her weapons unable to punch through Todoroki's frozen barriers without also causing a serious threat to Todoroki's life. In the end, it was too much, and Yaoyorozu got overwhelmed, frozen up to her neck as Midnight called the match. "Guess it's our turn, girl." Tokage grinned, jumping up and holding out a hand to Ryuko to pull her up as well. "Let's show these boys how it's done." Izuku found he was on the edge of his seat as he watched Ryuko and Tokage climb onto the stadium for the last round of the quarterfinals. He barely registered the call to begin, eyes focused entirely on two of his closest friends duking it out to prove how far their training had come. At the cue from Midnight, both girls took to the sky, Ryuko using her telekinesis to pull herself through the air, while Tokage used the ability of flight without separation that he'd helped her discover. "Man, it's crazy to see how well those two can fly." Tetsu cheered eagerly, the girls locked in hand-to-hand combat a good 20 feet in the air. "Yanagi's quirk lets her lift the weight of an average person, yeah?" Mina asked as they cheered their friends on. "So wouldn't that mean she can't do much else if she's using her quirk to fly like this?" "I guess." Kirishima frowned, "but I don't see what else she can do. Tokage's quirk makes her slippery, and I'm pretty sure splitting herself apart would break any sort of telekinetic grip Yanagi would have on her. Meanwhile, Tokage can fly," Uraraka picked up, their other green-haired friend splitting herself apart mid-sentence, "and do that. I wouldn't be so sure." Izuku grinned, noting Ryuko's expression. "Look at her. Ryuko has Tokage right where she wants her." While staying floating in the air, Ryuko released a telekinetic shockwave, knocking Tokage's floating pieces around and disorienting the lizard tail splitter. With that achieved, it was simple to grab one of the smaller pieces and drag it to the ground before its owner could orient themselves, Ryuko never losing her altitude. "She's been training, looks like she's boosted her quirk's strength and how many things she can manipulate at once." Izuku gave a proud grin at his white-haired friend. "Ryuko, huh?" Mine gave him a teasing grin, making him realize how he'd been referring to her both aloud. And in his head, this whole time, his flush like putting blood in the water to the teasing shark that was Mina Ashido. Gripping the railing, Endeavor looked down to the arena where Shoto and that Midoriya boy were stepping up for the first fight of the semifinals. This fight could either help Shoto heal further from the events of the USJ or break him further, being forced to fight the one his son had injured so grievously. He hoped that this Midoriya could help. He knew his own methods were only able to do so much, even if Shoto had started listening to him more since then. At that thought, he remembered the flames his son had used against the Yaoyorozu girl, the talk he'd had with him after the match, and the revelation his son had made to him. Shaking those thoughts away, he focused on the fight, the microphone and cameras picking up Shoto shaking like a leaf. Several of the pro heroes in the crowd started shouting for Shoto to man up, and other callous comments, Endeavor feeling a hot spike of rage in his gut at their words. Before he could say anything, or even think of what to try and say, the Midoriya boy had grabbed the microphone from Midnight. "Shut the hell up already." The boy's eyes had gone from gentle and compassionate when looking at Shoto to suddenly livid as he glared out at the pro-heroes. Those in the stands who'd been shouting demands were stunned to silence on the audacity alone. I can't." Shoto was clenching his fists, gazing almost fearfully at the ice forming around his hands. It would seem that even with all Shoto's training, the thought of using that same power against one who'd been hurt so grievously by it before was still too much. "The USJ?" Midoriya asked as Shoto gave a nod, unable to meet his classmate's eyes. At the mention of the tragic incident, many of the previously eager for combat heroes in the audience seemed to lose much of their fire. They remembered that these were still students, potential heroes, and ones who had experienced something traumatic far sooner than they ever should have. The fact that they were competing like this, pushing themselves like this, spoke volumes of their potential and raw determination, but it was not a flawless thing. "Then we won't use our quirks." Midoriya gave Shoto a reassuring grin. Heroes get into situations all the time where their quirk either wouldn't help or would make things worse. "Let's show these people what we can do without our powers." Yeah," Shoto nodded, back straightening as his resolve seemed to harden. "Miss Midnight, if either of us uses our powers in this fight, please disqualify the user." When Midoriya voiced his agreement, Midnight made yet another declaration of how it turned her on and called for the match to begin. "I'm really glad that woman isn't in charge of teaching sex ed." Endeavor ran a hand down his face. Down in the arena, Midoriya and Shoto charged each other, each readying their raw combat ability. Midoriya, he noted, fought like a brawler, powerful punches and kicks, but little in the way of finesse or form. Shoto, on the other hand, showed flawless form for the various hand-to-hand techniques he'd included in his son's training. The downside was those had all been designed around the use of Shoto's quirk. His son, lacking the same kind of frame he had, didn't have enough strength behind those blows to make the kind of damage needed to put Midoriya down. Shoto was distinctly the better hand-to-hand fighter as they were, landing far more hits than Midoriya was. But he just couldn't manage the raw strength needed to put down the stronger, and clearly more resilient, opponent. "The winner and the first of our finalists, Izuku Midoriya," Midnight declared as the audience gave a mixed response at best. Shoto was a crowd favorite given the boy's own power as well as Endeavor's status. Midoriya, though, through both his quirk and his declaration, was far less popular amongst the heroes attending and scouting the event. "Oh, Shoto," Fayumi fretted over him as he sat in the nurse's office for the stadium, his sister not all that happy at the large black eye he was sporting. Natsuo's comment of "nice shiner" had earned him a hard hit upside the head from their sister that honestly looked like it hurt more than Midoriya's punches. "Hell hath no fury like a sister irritated." "Don't worry, Fayumi." Shoto tried his best reassuring smile even as Natsuo whimpered, "It looks worse than it is." "I'll be the judge of that, young man," Recovery Girl scolded, although it didn't have much heat. Maybe she was just glad there were no quirk-related injuries to treat from this fight. On another note, Natsuo whimpered, hoping to change the subject away from Shoto's black eye. "You used your fire, what's that about?" "I thought you swore you never would." I've been doing a lot of thinking," Shoto admitted, looking at his siblings even as Recovery Girl checked over him, "about the kind of hero I've been trying to be, about the kind of hero I want to be. About what could have been different if I'd used my flames at the USJ. About what would happen if someone got in the future because I didn't use everything I could. And then there's this." Rummaging around in his bag, he fished out an old journal. "I found it in the attic." Casually, he tossed the old book to Fayumi, who caught it and flipped to the inside cover. "Property of Shoto Todoroki," Natsuo read out, confused. "Our uncle, the quirkless one." Shoto spoke about his apparent namesake, having been stunned that his father named him after someone weak, like a quirkless person, no matter what affection there might have been. The book, it talked a lot about what it was like growing up with our grandparents. Talked a lot about father. And it even had ideas that our uncle thought up for him, ideas he wanted, the great hero Endeavor, to be able to do, but they never got finished. "I took the bits in here, our uncle's idea of this Hinakami Kagura, and I'm making it my own. Being a hero my way." Fayumi's proud smile made the foregoing of his pledge worth it. Face set in a serious line, Izuku stared down at the ring. In the fist round, Bakugo had fought Uraraka and had clearly enjoyed getting to battle and beat someone Izuku was close to. Last round, Shinsou had actually managed to hurt Bakugo, breaking the bomber's nose and giving him a cup check to end all cup checks. As Mina had put it, leaving Bakugo livid and still wanting more combat. The blonde's anger only made worse upon noting how Shinsou had joined Izuku's circle. Now Bakugo was going to be fighting Ryuko. I don't like this. Tokage frowned as she watched the two fighters approaching the ring. That Pomeranian jackass looks out for blood. He is out for blood. Izuku scowled, fingers turning white as he clutched the armrests of his chair, and I don't know if Ryuko can win. I've never seen her be able to move fire with her quirk before, and while she can make shockwaves, I don't think they'll be as strong as his. Her only chance, is to knock him out of the ring before he can do anything. Begin, Midnight shouted as Ryuko lashed out with her quirk, trying to throw Bakugo from the ring. The blonde bastard had been expecting it through, throwing explosions out behind him to push himself forward and resist the force trying to shove him back. His quirk, already stronger than the previous rounds thanks to the worked-up sweat, got him closer and closer until he was right on top of Ryuko. Bakugo's savage grin sent a chill down Izuku's spine just before a first crashed into Ryuko's face, sending her hard against the ground. He didn't use his explosions. Mina was stunned, biting her nails nervously as they saw Ryuko work to get up, the punch to her head dazing her. He doesn't want to end this too fast. Izuku snarled, feeling his blood boil, feeling his rage demanding he go in there and stop the fight to deal with Bakugo himself. But he didn't. Izuku stayed in his seat, praying for Ryuko to make a comeback, to do something, as Bakugo battered her around until Midnight had enough and called the fight, a bruised and half-conscious telekinetic being carried off to Recovery Girl for treatment. Midoriya, Kirishima growled. Izuku's friends were just as livid as he was at the treatment Ryuko had undergone. At least when Izuku and Todoroki had fought without quirks, it was to show respect, and still let a shaken Todoroki put in a good showing, not to draw out and cause pain break him. Trust me. Izuku's voice deepened as he growled, his quirk boiling inside him. I planned to. He'd had to sit in his damn chair and watch what had just happened, and he hated himself for it. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey today. I hope you enjoyed exploring the fascinating what-if scenario of Deku. The possibilities were truly mind-blowing. If you found this video entertaining, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. Your support means the world to me and inspires me to bring you more captivating content in the future. Stay tuned for more exciting what-if stories and other amazing videos coming your way. Until next time, take care, stay curious.